Right at the backyard barbecue party, I was forced to serve my son and daughter-in-law's friends inside the very $600,000 house that I bought. My son pointed his finger straight at my face and said, "Either become a servant to my wife or get out of this house." Then he threw a server's apron at me. But I am still the one holding the property deed. So by 9 p.m. I showed up with my attorney, exposed the whole truth, and forced them to pack up and leave. Thank you so much for joining me here on Dad Returns. To help build our community, please drop a comment showing your city or country. Where are you tuned in from? Note that this narrative includes fictionalized elements for entertainment and educational purposes. Any similarity to actual names or places is coincidental, but the lesson behind it matters. My son pointed a finger straight at my face and told me to get out of my own house. That sentence has lived in my chest for months now. Not like a bruise, bruises fade. More like a nail driven into old wood. You can pull it out, but the hole stays. I want to tell you how we got to that backyard, to that grill, to that moment. Because it didn't start with cruelty. It never does. It started the way most things start, with love, with loss, and with a man who believed that the people he raised would remember where they came from. My name is Walter Gaines. I am 60 years old. For 38 of those years I was a carpenter. Not the weekend project kind. Not the man who builds a deck and calls himself a craftsman. I mean the kind of carpenter who shows up before sunrise, who can read the grain of a board the way some men read a newspaper, who knows by the weight of a plank whether it will hold or whether it will split under pressure. I built Bennett & Sons woodshop from a single table saw in a rented garage into a 12-man operation off Route 48 outside Dayton, Ohio. We made custom cabinetry staircases, built-in bookshelves, the kind of furniture that gets passed down instead of thrown out. I was proud of that. Carol was proud of that. Carol was my wife for 31 years. She had red hair that went silver at the temples when she turned 50, and she refused to dye it because she said she'd earned every strand. She kept a garden in the backyard of our rental on Birch Street, tomatoes, zinnias, a rose bush that climbed the fence every summer like it was trying to escape. She used to say that a house isn't a home until something is growing in it. I used to say that was the most Carol thing she had ever said, and she would throw a dish towel at me and laugh. She was diagnosed in March of 2020. Pancreatic cancer stage 3. The doctor who told us had kind eyes and a careful voice, and I remember thinking that it must be the hardest part of his job, sitting across from two people whose whole world just changed shape and trying to hand them that information gently, like it was something that could be held without breaking. We fought it the way Carol fought everything, straight on, no flinching. Chemotherapy, a clinical trial in Columbus. A second opinion at the Cleveland Clinic. I drove every mile of it. I sat in every waiting room. I learned what words like CA 19-9 and gemcitabine meant because Carol deserved a husband who understood what was happening inside her body, not just someone who showed up and held her hand without knowing why. She passed on a Tuesday in November of 2021. It was raining, the thin, gray kind of Ohio rain that doesn't commit to anything. She was in our bed at home the way she wanted. I was holding her hand. Ryan was there. That is all I will say about that day, because some things belong only to the people who were in the room. What came after was the accounting. I had spent 38 years building something. The shop, the reputation, the savings account I added to every month, like it was a second mortgage I owed to our future. Carol and I had talked about the house for years, a real house, not a rental, something with a yard where she could grow more than tomatoes. We never bought one while she was alive because there was always a reason to wait. The shop needed a new kiln. Ryan needed braces, then college help, then a loan when he started his own business. There was always a reason. After she was gone, I sat at the kitchen table on Birch Street, and I looked at the numbers. $410,000 in savings. The shop, which I sold to my foreman, Dale Hutchins, for a fair price because Dale had earned it, and I no longer had the heart for it. The truck. A 2009 Ford F250 that I had driven 190,000 miles, and which I sold to a guy named Pete from Miamisburg for $8,000 cash. When I added it all together, I had just over $600,000. I bought the house on Clover Hill Drive on a cold morning in January of 2022. $600,000. Every cent of it mine, built from sawdust and early mornings and 38 years of showing up. I paid cash. No mortgage, no co-signer, no bank officer telling me what I could or couldn't afford. The closing took less than an hour. When the title agent slid the keys across the table, my hand was shaking, not from weakness, but from the particular weight of a thing you have worked your whole life toward and finally touched. The house was a 2-story colonial with a covered front porch, a kitchen big enough to actually cook in, and a backyard with good afternoon light. There was a section along the back fence where the soil was dark and soft, exactly the kind Carol used to kneel in on Birch Street with her gardening gloves and her old radio playing country music she pretended not to love. Ryan drove up that afternoon. He was 34, then broad-shouldered like I used to be, with Carol's eyes and my stubbornness. A combination I had always found equal parts endearing and exhausting. He walked through every room with me, his boots loud on the hardwood floors, and when we stood on the back porch looking out at that yard, he put his arm around my shoulders, the way men do when words feel too small. "Dad," he said, and his voice was thick in the way it gets when he's trying not to show something. "She would have loved this place." "I know," I said. He pulled me into a hug, then a real one, not the kind men give each other at arm's length. He held on for a long moment, and when he stepped back, his eyes were red at the rims, and he didn't bother to look away. "You don't have to worry about anything now," he said. "You did your part. You took care of all of us your whole life." He squeezed my shoulder hard enough that I felt it in the bone. "Now it's our turn to take care of you. I promise you that, Dad. I promise." I believed him. I want you to understand that. I am not a naive man. I spent nearly 4 decades running a business, managing crews, reading contracts, dealing with suppliers who smiled at you while they padded the invoice. I know what people look like when they are performing sincerity versus when they mean it. My son meant it that day. I would stake 38 years of reading people on that, which is what makes everything that came after so hard to explain. Not because it was complicated, but because the most painful betrayals are never the ones that arrive wearing a mask. They are the ones that start with a real hug on a back porch, in the cold January light, with your son's voice breaking over a promise he fully intended to keep. The road from that porch to everything else that is the story I need to tell you. The road from that porch led exactly 2 years before it turned into something I didn't recognize. For 24 months after I moved into Clover Hill Drive, life was quiet, in the way I had forgotten quiet could be. I planted tomatoes along the back fence in Carol's memory, not because I particularly enjoy gardening, but because I needed something alive in that yard, something that required attention and rewarded it. I learned badly how to cook more than sandwiches. I had coffee with Frank DeLuca next door on Tuesday mornings, a retired electrician from Cleveland, who had strong opinions about the designated hitter rule and weak opinions about everything else, which made him excellent company. I started sleeping through the night again, something I hadn't done since Carol's diagnosis. Ryan called every Sunday. Sometimes Brianna would get on the line briefly. She had a bright, clipped voice, efficient like someone who had a list of things to accomplish, and a phone call was one of them. Their boy Tyler was 6 when I moved in, then 7, growing fast, the way boys do when you're not watching closely enough. I saw them at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at Tyler's 7th birthday party, at one of those indoor trampoline places where the music is loud enough to rearrange your teeth. Everything was fine. I want to say that clearly because I don't want you to think I saw it coming and looked away. I did not see it coming. My son was not a villain in those 2 years. He was just my son, imperfect, occasionally prideful, but present. Calling on Sundays, showing up at Christmas, keeping his promise, or so I believed. The call came on a Wednesday in January of 2024. Ryan's voice had a texture I hadn't heard since Carol's diagnosis, that particular flatness men get when they are holding something heavy and trying not to let you hear the weight of it. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything." His contracting company, RG Home Solutions, which he had built over 8 years, into a 12-person crew doing kitchen remodels and bathroom renovations across Montgomery County, had gone under. Not slowly, not with warning signs he could point to. A string of bad contracts, a materials supplier who went bankrupt mid-project, 2 clients who sued over delays and won. The kind of collapse that doesn't announce itself until the building is already on the ground. The bank foreclosed on their house in Beaver Creek 3 weeks later. I drove to see him the following Saturday. He met me at the door of the extended stay motel off I-675, where he and Brianna and Tyler were living out of 2 suitcases and a plastic bin of Tyler's Legos. The room smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and microwave meals. Tyler was sitting on the bed in his socks watching cartoons with the volume too low, the way kids do when they sense that the adults in the room need quiet more than they do. Ryan looked like a man who hadn't slept properly in a month. His jaw was tight, his eyes were red-rimmed, and he kept standing up and sitting down like he couldn't decide which one was less humiliating. "I don't need money," he said before I could open my mouth. He said it the way people say things they've rehearsed. "I just need time. A few months. Until I can get back on my feet." Brianna sat in the chair by the window with her arms crossed and her eyes fixed on something outside the parking lot, the highway anywhere but me. She was 32, dark-haired, sharp-featured, with the kind of posture that suggested she had spent her whole life refusing to let anyone see her bend. She had grown up hard, Ryan had told me once. A single-mother apartments that changed every year, the kind of childhood where security was something other people had. I understood that scar. I respected it even. Some wounds make people careful. Some make them determined. I would spend the next several months learning which kind Brianna carried. "You can come home," I said. Ryan's head came up fast. "Dad, I mean it. The house has 4 bedrooms. Tyler needs a real bed, not a motel mattress." I looked at Brianna then because she was the one I needed to reach. "Both of you, come home." She turned from the window. Her eyes were dry and very steady. "We don't want to impose," she said. "You're not imposing, you're family." The word landed differently on each of them. Ryan's shoulders dropped about an inch, the way a man's do when he's been bracing for something that doesn't hit. Brianna held very still for a moment, then nodded once, a small, precise movement, like she was filing something away. That night, a cold February rain came down sideways off Lake Erie and made a sound against the motel windows like radio static. I helped Ryan load the plastic bin into my truck. Tyler carried his own backpack very seriously, both straps on the way 8-year-olds do when they want to be useful. When I lifted him into the back seat, he smelled like shampoo and the particular warmth of a child who has been anxious all day and is finally cautiously relaxing. "Grandpa," he said as I buckled his seatbelt. "Yeah, buddy. Is your house big?" "Big enough," I said. He thought about that for a second, then nodded with the grave authority of a child who has decided something is acceptable. I almost laughed. I almost cried. I did neither because the rain was cold, and Ryan was watching from the doorway, and some moments you just carry quietly. On the drive back to Clover Hill Drive, I said the only thing I needed to say. I said it calmly, without making it a threat, because it wasn't one, it was simply the truth. And I had spent 38 years believing that the truth stated clearly was enough. "This is still my house," I told Ryan. "You're welcome in it for as long as you need. But it's my house. That's the only rule." Ryan reached across the center console and gripped my forearm the way he used to when he was a teenager, and wanted me to know something mattered to him without saying it out loud. "I know, Dad," he said. "I know." Behind us, Tyler had fallen asleep against the window, his breath fogging a small circle on the glass, his backpack still on his lap, like he wasn't ready to put it down yet. I should have paid more attention to who stayed quiet on that drive. 3 months. That is all it took to turn a guest into a landlord. I want to be precise about that number because precision matters when you are trying to explain how a thing happened. Not 3 years, not 3 decades. 90 days, give or take, from the night I buckled Tyler into my truck in a cold February rain, to the morning I carried my own mattress down a flight of stairs and pushed it through the door of the laundry room. The first month was genuinely fine. Ryan fixed the gutter above the garage that had been pulling away from the fascia since October, climbed up there on a Saturday morning, without being asked, came down with paint on his forearm and grease on his knees, and I thought, there he is. There is the son I raised. Brianna cooked dinner twice that first week, a chicken casserole and a pasta dish, and set the table properly, placemats and everything, the way people do when they are guests, and want you to know they understand that. Tyler did his homework at the kitchen table and called me Grandpa Walt and asked me approximately 400 questions a day about woodworking, which I answered every single one of because those were the best 400 questions anyone had asked me in years. I thought, this is going to be all right. The shift was so gradual I couldn't tell you the exact day it started. That is the thing about slow change, it doesn't announce itself. It accumulates the way sawdust does in a shop. You don't notice it until you look down and realize the floor is covered. It began with the bedroom. 6 weeks in, Brianna came to me on a Sunday afternoon with what she called a practical suggestion. She stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, Carol's bedroom, the room I had chosen because the morning light came through the east window exactly right, and she smiled the way people smile when they have already decided something and are presenting it as a question. "Walter, I've been thinking," she said. "This room is so big and you're just one person. Ryan and I have Tyler in the small room, and honestly, the 3 of us are practically on top of each other." She tilted her head. "And those stairs, I worry about you. At your age, one bad night, one trip to the bathroom at 2 in the morning. It's a real safety concern." I was 60 years old. I had climbed scaffolding for 38 years. I did not tell her that because she was a guest in my home and I was trying to be gracious. Ryan appeared behind her in the hallway right on cue. "She's right, Dad. The laundry room downstairs is actually a decent size. We could set it up real nice for you. Ground floor, no stairs close to the kitchen." He said it the way he used to talk me into things when he was a teenager, that particular blend of logic and warmth that made disagreement feel unreasonable. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was a small thing. I told myself that keeping peace was worth more than a room. So on a Tuesday morning in late March, I carried my own mattress down the stairs. I want you to picture that. A 60-year-old man alone dragging the mattress he and his wife had slept on for 11 years off the bed frame, maneuvering it through the hallway, bumping it down 14 steps one at a time, while his son and daughter-in-law were still finishing their coffee at the breakfast table. Ryan offered to help when he heard the 3rd bump. "I've got it," I said, because some things you need to carry yourself so you understand exactly how heavy they are. The laundry room was 8 feet by 10 feet. It had a washer and a dryer along the east wall, a single window that looked out at the base of the back fence, and a light fixture that buzzed faintly when you turned it on. I set my mattress against the opposite wall. I put my nightstand beside it, the one Carol had painted blue the summer we moved to Birch Street, because she said every bedroom needed at least one brave color. I put her photograph on it, the one from our 25th anniversary, where she was laughing at something I'd said that I can't remember anymore, her head thrown back, her silver-streaked hair catching the light. Then I went back upstairs to get the last box. Brianna was in the master bedroom. She had already opened the windows. She was holding one of Carol's throw pillows, a yellow one hand-embroidered, that Carol had made herself the winter before her diagnosis. Brianna turned it over once, examining the stitching, then set it on the chair in the corner with the particular efficiency of someone rearranging inventory. I'll put her things together in some boxes.